Are you ready, Ernst? Ah, thank you. Welcome, everybody, at the Innovation Café. This is like a really intimate place where we are right now. We are at the Kazerne, but this is a different space where we are at this moment. This is normally the restaurant Benz, if I'm right. My name is Charlotte Grun, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm also a designer based in Eindhoven, het Klokgebouw, next to my neighbor, Ferdy, who will be one of the speakers. Today we have a special edition because we are talking about a little bit about, of course, tech and design. Brainport is all about tech and design, so that's why we have the Innovation Café. For the people who haven't been here, we have this every Thursday because we want to think about the wicked problems that we have right now in Eindhoven. There are many people joining our city and our, how do you call it, society. And how do we manage that? How do we keep it nice, our city of Eindhoven? So today we have Ferdy and we have Wendy, who will give their perspective about this problem, but also more about solutions and opportunities that we have. Well, Ferdy, first of all, for you, the stage. Big applause.
Good evening, everybody. Everyone is comfortable. It's a really nice, cozy, intimate setting. So if you have any questions, because it's a cafe, I understood. It's a cafe, so let's have a dialogue. I will do a little bit of a story. I was asked to only use one slide, and I didn't manage. Although I really appreciate the fact to have one slide and just have a conversation. Let's see how it goes. My name is Ferdy Gilsing. From Yellowchess. We are a design agency in the Klokgebouw next to Charlotte, and we design breakthroughs. So typically, of course, you would say, hey, we design a product, we design we design breakthroughs. That sounds really quite, maybe a bit arrogant, a bit high-hearted, but we focus really on societal challenges, transition challenges, and of course nowadays we need breakthroughs in order to achieve positive futures in a way. And this is about tech and design. And the question I got from Annemone was like, what's the first thing that comes to you in mind when you're having this agency, when you talk about tech and design? And that was this. I'm a designer from background, and I would say the first 20 years of my career I spent in large corporations, amongst others BMW and Philips. And 5 years ago, I lived in Munich and I was amongst the design team of BMW. And I was always intrigued by the way how they were so committed on the outside, the exterior of the design. That was still the main course of what they were doing. But in fact, this picture is from 1953. And it's been an electronics company in that time in the US that already had this concept car, this vision of a self-driving car. Could you imagine? So it took more than 70 years almost to get that vision getting reality. And from an exterior point of view, like the way how designers would approach this, it's very interesting to see, well, they have this like beautiful sculpture of like a glass thing on the roof, but also like what's the use case of when you don't have to drive? So in particular in BMW, they were looking into always like paying a lot of attention to like sitting in the chair and the driver. Not so much attention to all the other spaces. But when you're in the self-driving car, you would almost say like, okay, you can turn your chair and you can play a game. So this picture was always an inspiration because we all know like the flashy concept cars that you see nowadays. But the focus for a designer was much more broadening up. It's not so much about the exterior, not so much about the interior. It's also like what's the role of a car in urban development. So what's the role of a car, or what's the role of people, and what's the role of the urban development when we talk about mobility, which is interesting. And maybe my provocation would be, in this setting, it was like, okay, the idea is there, the vision is there, but the technology wasn't there. And skipping to this picture, which is 2020, so it's 4 years ago, and this was just on the nu.nl, nu.nl, it's like the news that you get every day in your phone. which was a Tesla driving in Canada with 3 people in it. And they had it on the automatic control. They were driving 150 kilometers an hour. And the police spotted them and tried to stop them, managed in the end. But just this idea that people was like, oh, let's do that. I was still fascinated about it. So the technology is there, it's real, but we still have not managed ourselves to make it part of our daily life. That comes to the point, other provocation, I think the technology is there, and we see that in many cases when we always ask our clients to say, what is the breakthrough that we want to achieve when a project starts? And it's hardly the technology, it's more like the system around it, the way how people work. So that would be the second part probably of the discussion that we're having today. Technology is there. What do we need to do in order to drive breakthroughs, in order to drive new solutions forward to positive futures? Okay. One of the things Charlotte asked me, like, can we talk a little bit about urban development? Because indeed Eindhoven is booming. We read it every day in the newspaper. Designing the city. And we did a project a couple of years back for the Urban Development Initiative in Eindhoven, which focuses on how do we actually build our cities more sustainable, more healthier. And here comes the fact there is a technology which is called digital twinning. You've probably heard of it, it's quite known, which is also interesting because the traditional way of designing a city is looking into the individual pieces like mobility, energy, housing, and you create the most perfect way of how you would design that. But when you bring it together, it's really difficult to get the overview. So of course, policymakers think about how could we use digital twinning. But in order to drive breakthroughs there, it's really hard to integrate it in the current urban planning process. And that's fascinating. So during the Dutch Design Week, and I need to give credits to Charlotte because you made this, right? We tried to manifest that whole idea about, okay, the traditional way of urban planning versus what if you would do a digital enabled way of urban planning, which is super interesting. But still you would come across like, yeah, we put the system basically central to the problem. And what if you would use happiness? What would if you really drive values in the forefront of when we design a city, which is super interesting, of course. Typically, because if you then add the technology to it, you can actually steer, like, do we want to have a little bit more livability, healthiness? Do we want to have a little bit more safety around it? Which is a completely different approach, but super interesting, of course. But again, the breakthrough there is not so much in the technology, but it's more in the way how we work together, how we set up these new processes. Any questions so far? Because we are in the pub, in the cafe.
So, I guess I need the microphone.
Yes,
Here it comes.
Yes, you need a mic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I guess what I like about what you're doing, and maybe, I guess I always think of sometimes these design things are a little bit top down, like we think we should do this because we see this and this. But sometimes what I really respect is when you see them talk with, like crowdsource what we should be doing, like a suggestion box, you know?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day because I spent a lot of time on the high-tech campus, and I was like, hasn't anybody thought that we should have dimmable, like, or motion sensor lights in these bathrooms? I mean, ridiculous. The light, we literally flip on and off switches. We're wasting all sorts of energy doing that.
Exactly.
That's a little minor suggestion.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, couldn't we crowdsource, if everybody kept saying, okay, I've got this, if everyone contributed 3 ideas to change in their urban area, you could crowdsource that and culminate those and say, hey, everyone's saying we need, you know, a direct route to Dusseldorf via the bus line or whatever, or via the train line. Everyone's saying this or everyone's saying that. You know, I mean, I guess sometimes I think design feels a little top down sometimes. It can be very top down.
Can be.
And how do you ensure that the consumer is part of the journey?
Maybe the question should also be like, is design top down or is technology top down?
I
I make it very simple.
The Good question. Depends on how you would formulate top down. I think I can only speak for the way how we approach these things. And I think often, of course, like what designers do, what is the challenge here? And then you start to dive into it to reframe it in some sort. But we always look into like who would be the people that you need to include in order to understand the question better, but also to make ideas real. And so you come across different layers of stakeholders in a way. So maybe a little bit about our name, Yellowchess. Okay, what is it? Apart from maybe it sounds fancy or maybe you don't like it. But the whole idea is about yellow is the color of creativity, solutions, meaning, ideas. And the chess part is more about who do we involve to make these ideas also real and live. And in particular in all these complex challenges that we face today, you need to involve people. And often where it gets interesting if you involve people where there's a conflict. So not so much the people that are already pro, but also the people that are against, because you can learn so much from it in order to drive new visions forward instead of current options and decide upon instead. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
We will also get more. Do you want your questions now? Because actually the upset was that you would have the presentation and then afterwards.
I would do a 10-minute presentation and then we do the...
No, it's fine. Okay.
I don't need a mic, but
I have to give you the...
That's for the
YouTube channel. Yeah. Yes.
when you're talking about digital twins, I mean, it's nowadays common in industry. That's how airplanes are built and designed, cars are made, So what you're talking about is collaborative design.
Yeah.
What I experience is the difficult thing, it's not the collaboration, because you get, while you're designing and thinking about problems and processes, more and more people involved and more looks to get on the topic to get a holistic thing.
Yeah.
But there comes a time where you need to cut it off.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you keep talking and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Germans are very good.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
okay. We have a live stream, eh? So, no, just okay.
I feel some sort of frustration.
So that means there always needs to be a top-down approach.
Absolutely.
Decision making.
Absolutely.
And I think you need a phase of collaborative design where you talk about what are the goals, what is it, what we want to achieve, and then you make a step, and you start implementing, and then you work in a waterfall effect.
Absolutely.
So what was your question?
Fully agree.
I was more remarking.
Okay.
We are in agreement. No, it's a combination.
Ernst, what is your question?
Real quick? Or a comment?
Yeah. Well, there's not really a sound here. This is more for the video, so I will try to... Oh, you want it for a video? Okay. It's going to be a challenge.
Because otherwise our listeners on YouTube don't get to hear your question.
So I have a question. So digital twin is a term that is used in a very inflationary way. I have even in my team some people working on the topic, and we make fun of it, how many different definitions there are. Yeah. So what is your definition of a digital twin?
Oh, I was not prepared to have digital twin questions in a way, but
yeah, let me add, because I was thinking the digital twin, is it just the buildings or is it also social behavior in the city?
No, it's the way, a good question in the end. So the way how it was used here, and probably the picture has been not reflecting on the way how it was. There's a system which projects like a map, where you can actually see if you add like more housing, more green, more energy, what it does in a way towards the city. So you can actually use it as a decision tool. You can use it as a way to talk with citizens about what if you do this, what if you do that. So it's like that how it's been used.
It's not a model.
It's a tool to.
So.
Yeah, so a digital twin is basically like the twin of the reality in a way. So you project it. Yeah, and the way, because there's so much data available today, you can actually also see like what if you do a little bit more energy or more green here. So you can do everything within a specific area. So that's a tool to help to make design decisions.
As an analogy, could you say normally you make a mock-up, you have a maquette.
Yeah, exactly.
You have buildings. In a digital twin, you don't just have the buildings, you have the roads, you have people walking in the roads, you have cars driving around. You can see how the air pollution is, what the wind
how many
does,
parking places, how many, exactly. So,
We have another question from Ernst.
Yeah,
That's also for the viewers.
yeah, so you are not expecting something to emerge out of the digital twin. You use it only as a depiction of your idea to communicate and...
yeah, maybe to get one thing straight. Yeah. So we are not a digital twin expert.
Yeah.
So the way how we've been involved in this is that there is an interesting technology which requires different ways of working. And the way what we've seen is, particularly in policies and in urban development planning, it's been quite a challenge to actually change that ways of working accordingly. And I think that's kind of the key thing of this point here.
Yeah. It's too bad that you have this illustration, because when we showed it at the Embassy of Mobility, there was actually in this side of this box, there were like 4 screens that would show you the different
projections of
3D models of how the city would look like if you look at it from a happiness or different perspective. That was actually what made it quite interesting. Yeah.
So, actually, you're talking about the design brief.
Please use the mic also for the viewers.
So you're talking about the design brief. What's the vision I need to have for the design? Is it an optimized city for traffic, or is it an optimized city for well-feeling, things like that?
Yes, it's a way to enable decision making in a better way.
But now I'm also a bit curious. What is your background? Because you are...
I'm an interim manager.
An interim manager. Okay, that's fine. He's an interim manager for the people. Okay.
How much time do I still have, Chanel?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think you should go to your next project.
Okay. Maybe building on the question here. So this is a big... One of the things is, of course, inherited to the way how we do things is involving people, involving stakes, and we just already talked a little bit about it. This was for the Climate Neutral Cities project from Eindhoven and Brainport. So they were tasked by Europe to say how can Brainport or Eindhoven Helmond become climate neutral in 2030. And they asked us, like, can we make this a thing from the city itself, so not like a policy thing. So for us was very much about who do we involve, how do we involve them. And as part of the project, because we always say we don't do single-off workshops or co-creations, because you won't achieve any breakthrough with that. So this was part of the project. And there was this one stage that it was about bringing technology and design together. So like, we have identified already like what the breakthroughs were needed to become climate neutral in 2030. So we wanted to also look into technology in a way, like because the whole EHV is full of technology inspiration with the Next Nature is there. And we had like 250 people focusing on like 25 challenges. So it was super interesting also to see what comes out of it. On the one side, to have like for like a half a day, all these people really with different expertise to think about it, but also condense it to like straight single outcomes. So not like a full wall full of ideas, but you really like, okay, what is it that we need to put forward here? And I think also nice, like technology was there, so it was more about how do we make it work in a way, and what's needed in order to do so. Last thing, because sometimes strategy can be quite ambiguous in a way, when it comes to directions, when it comes to like new ways of working, roadmaps and all of this. This is a project of last Dutch Design Week, which is also about meaningful meetings and having people together. This is the anti-text café, how we called it. And maybe you know, one out of 6 people has difficulties reading and writing in the Netherlands, adult people. It's not like analphabetic, it's, you know...
We call it low literacy.
It's low literacy, yeah. So it's not that you cannot read, it's more that you have difficulties to understand like text. We've done a project in Helmond when it was about like how do we approach that with all the societal organizations. But the next step was like how do we approach people with a Dutch background to actually overcome like the shame and all of these things to work on it. And one of the things was like there's little awareness with people about this topic. And it's not so much the people that have difficulty reading and writing, it's also the people to bring awareness about that this is such an important matter. So we built a cafe, not for people that have difficulties reading and writing, but actually for people to experience what it is to not to have difficulties with that. So there was a pub, it's on the Ketelhuisplein, Bakkie 040, maybe some of you know it. And we got rid of all the text in this, and we made everything visual. So, and visual and also a little bit with hearing. And we did it quite implicit, so it was not so super shouting, but people just came in and they were like kind of uncomfortable, like what is it here that to, and also like, yeah, well, you maybe see this is like euros, but some people thought this is like the strength of the coffee that's been here. So, and actually that was the thing that was happening also to people, of course, when they have difficulties reading and writing, because they come into a restaurant, find difficult with the menu and so on. And we did it for a week. And it was for us also, of course, interesting, because we've been in this topic like for 3 years, and here it became like real, like 10 days of almost like real-time user research and meaningful conversations, and that was nice. So talking about breakthroughs for us was a little breakthrough. And the other point, and that's the last point I wanted to make. So when it comes to strategies, making things tangible to actually test it is a great way to actually learn and to bring things forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
talk.
Ferdy.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Now for our other speaker, Wendy PLomp.
Hi.
Our director,
Hi, Wendy.
and also well known from Dutch Invertuals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Please take the
Dan
stage.
komt het allemaal goed.
Yeah, thanks. Welcome, everybody. As well, I also had the assignment to use one slide, which we didn't manage. But I focus more on the project we did during the Dutch Design Week for the city of Eindhoven. A small introduction. I'm Wendy from Dutch Invertuals. We started in 2009 with a collective of designers from different disciplines, with the idea that together we can tell a bigger story than only my own story. And I am constantly curious in new technology, but also using different techniques and materialization. So I'm really interested in also scouting designers from different academies to understand better what is happening in the world at that point in the design field, and how people work on the designs, and also the mentality and way of thinking, which I think is constantly giving us a lot of inspiration to have also the young generation at our big table to constantly have different ideas. And so therefore, since 2009, we grew into a studio, a foundation, and an academy. And for us, the foundation is really important for our research, experiments, and exhibitions we do with designers. We always ask them within a theme to create something new, or something which gives answer to it. We try to make this kind of futures tangible. And with the studio, we ask the designers also to work with us on different projects, which can be with brands or with the city of Eindhoven. And we have our academy. It's an online academy, so worldwide. We have 6-week programs to give something, a part of Eindhoven, which is about design. They always want to know what's happening in Eindhoven, which is about design. So this is EHV, Architects of Identity. I also need to mention, because we managed to do the project, I will show you later, together. EHV is a strategic and design company, and is working on a lot of different placement projects, but also they create identities. They made the identity of the city of Eindhoven. I hope you all know the vibes. Otherwise, during the dinner, I will give you more insights on that. So this is in Dutch, but how can we design encounters. How that was the question of the city of Eindhoven, for a growing city with different cultures, different people live there with different paces. So how can you create this growing city more social, bring people together, and create interesting surroundings. So what we said is to meet each other, to have these kind of gatherings. We try to symbolize that with circle. So the circle is for us to connect to. It's a perfect round shape. It's the mother of all forms. It's endless. So this gathering we really see as a beautiful circle. This is the exhibition we did. We have every year, we show 2 exhibitions in Milan and during the Dutch Design Week, and other locations of course, but the circle was intriguing us to work with. And to play with the circle, we said the circle is embracing this universal language. Universal language is about play, music, art, something you gather with, something you stand around with, something you are intrigued by. So how can we create these encounters? I mean, you get around. This is a simple example of a karaoke. I don't know how to say it well, but karaoke bike. People in Mauer Park could join the karaoke momentum and sing the song, and they have a great audience. But we really love the simpleness of this installation, and that it gathered so many people. And the circle is for all cultures, it's something human. We stand around, be around the circle, and somebody can show their qualities or performance or love for things. And this is, too fast, in all cultures. So it's storytelling, it's a place for music, it's a place to play, it's about gathering. So this is how we started the project. How can we gather? How can we create this circle of universal language? As we always do with Dutch Invertuals, we sit around this big table and we discuss with different designers how we can make a difference, or how can we create these meaningful encounters in the city. And the city has objects we discuss with different designers, like from different disciplines, all connected to Eindhoven, born and living here, but also because of the study or came to Eindhoven. So they all have this interest in Eindhoven because it has this beautiful bike lanes and they wanted to stay here, or they have this interesting work environment, but also the meaningful encounters about the beautiful objects like the Evoluon object of the future, which is interesting to mention as well. So how can we create these meaningful encounters in the city? So we created, during the Dutch Design Week, we created this glass house. We had this glass house, we didn't create it. So we showed our exhibition there. Anybody went to the glass house? Anybody see it? Yeah? Okay. So here you see the objects we created. So because of we had these discussions, work sessions with the designers together, and we created these thoughts about how can you create this public objects for a public space. And everybody had their ideas about that, of course, but how can you make it tangible? How can you make it visible in a nice way, which is not realizing it yet? Because it's nice that people from Eindhoven could also give reaction to it, have their own opinion about it. So we created this 1:8 scale models, which were all having their characteristics in the sense like, hey, this universal language was about music, and the designer made an instrument which you could be in, like a small pavilion. Other designers created a kind of walking area to emphasize on the fresh air. You see there with the tree, that you really were provoked to go there, to have your own surroundings, and to have this highlight in the city, which people not only meet and be together on that spot, but also talk about in other regions or other locations. I mean, you don't need to be to meet each other directly and to say hi to each other, but it's also about an object you can talk about, which is interesting, a meaningful encounter. You see the object? And this is done by, and that's what is really interesting, is that the designers and the people who live here are all creators, but this is their way of working, to create this kind of sculpture, but on the other hand really think along and try to create something for the area.
Can I ask you a quick question? Where is this person from? Because where is this person from who created this? Because of
it's Carlo Lorenzetti.
Oh.
He is from the US, and he lives here because he attended the academy, design academy, and he wants to stay here because he loves to bike.
It's really cool.
In the US, it's difficult to bike.
I saw something similar in Japan. That's what I was asking.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very inspired by the gardens and from Japan, but also inspired to every time he goes biking, he watches his phone to check the weather or the air quality. And the air quality in the Netherlands is really poor or bad. And he wanted to show this way to show the spars. They are symbolizing they contain a lot of CO2. And so it's really a symbol in that sense to go there for fresh air. Of course, the air is not restricted to that area, but I mean, it's a nice symbol to have a location with this fresh air. Any questions, by the way, because there's a lot to tell about.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
I was not sure if you were ready for a question, if we would just wait for your presentation to
Yeah,
finish.
there is some more images, so I can talk about it a bit. No, I can talk about it a bit further. So this one I talked about. This is this music instrument. It's a guitar. So here you see the strings and to tone it. And the idea is that people can use the strings to have a nice vibration in the space, but also to have this beautiful sound, of course. And to calm down as well. It's a calming area. Here you see the piece of Teresa Pelo. She created a chip. It's a symbolization of maybe. The idea is like to create fundaments, to create objects which are important for the region, but also to her fascination is the symbolics, and she plays a lot with digital symbolism, and she wanted to create something where people can play and find and discover parts of this symbolism. This is a scale, of course. Children played a lot with it, but it's not something to play in that sense. Maybe with it. But, this is the whistle tree, and the designer of that is here in the audience. Maybe he wants to say something about the whistle tree.
Who is the designer of the whistle tree? Because then I can give him.
It's Remco. It's part
Remco,
of Studio EHV.
No, it's just for the.
Oh, that's good.
Tree, so
Okay. I'm not worried. No, this is the whistle tree, and we created it because what is nice is that we always work with this group of designers on all these projects, and you kind of interact with each other. So it's also an ongoing design research. And by talking and having a dialogue about these subjects, we thought like, okay, when you kind of, when you want to design meeting or gathering, a gathering doesn't always have to be in the same place and time. So sometimes also you can get connected to a place together, but you've never been there together. For instance, the Eiffel Tower in Paris is one of these icons, like it's an icon. If you've been in Paris, you've seen the Eiffel Tower. And somehow this Eiffel Tower is what connects us, because for the people who have been in Paris, they also have seen the Eiffel Tower. And a bit on that nature, we thought like, how can we create an object where you can leave something of yourself? And we thought something very low threshold is like a whistle, so you can whistle something. The tree records it and then starts playing it back over with an interval. So the tree accumulates these whistles into like a whistle concert. So over the time you can kind of hear people whistle and it just records the frequency of the whistle, so not the voice. So we had to add some code to the tree, so it actually just records whistling. Wow. So the whistle tree of the fluitboom, in plaats van de fruitboom.
Wow, thank you. Well, there goes my question. I was wanted to ask you, like, what is your favorite project? But that's going to be.
Of course. No, I'm
just joking.
I think a lot of objects, scale models were super nice to discover, and all these different insights of different designers. Here they're recording. I think it was really. It's really something that we really liked, in the sense that it's something you talk about and you discuss and you ask the different designers and people who live in certain areas. If you all collect that data, it's really interesting to see what comes out of it. So all the designers also, how they react to things. What I liked about it is that it's really pushing to a next level, that you really can create these objects for public space. And during the Dutch Design Week, it was really nice to hear all the stories and how people who would embrace it and which they really like. Because to make it really tangible and to make it this size, you really feel like, hey, this could be an interesting object for a public space. And that made it a very successful and very interesting presentation. And this presentation will also continue at the City Hall, we have a small exhibition there as well to showcase these pieces, and would be lovely to really test one out, and maybe to work with students or engineers to really see how you can accomplish it, that it's HUFT-proof, and that it's and see how people in certain areas also react to it, and then you can enlarge it and see how you can do show more of them. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Wendy. Big applause. Wow, very fascinating. I have a question for you, because I'm also a bit curious about what do you think of tech?
What I
do
love
you
it.
use tech? What do you love about tech?
It's the most easy thing to use because it's something new and you can embrace it. It's helping us a lot to see things on a different level. But we always think it's together with craftsmanship and together with the human touch of things. And I think we can easily embrace tech, and we really can push it. And we can use it as a tool or to work together with. We also in the studio test a lot with AI, how to use that and how can it change our way of thinking or working. But we never lose our making skills, and we never lose to bring the human touch in things, because it's our identity.
Wow, thank you. I think for me personally, we have a question. For me personally, AI is also a bit invisible. So if you use it together with an identity, it also gives it becomes more personal or an object.
Yeah, it could be.
Let's go to the question. Ferdy, you can also join us for the discussion. Please do. Yeah. This is for the first. Yes.
I have a question. In your inspiration images, you showed a lot of people actually around squares, but there was absolutely no obstacles or objects in it. What made you decide to go to a lot of objects? So the inspiration was a lot of people in squares who are normally empty, and then going to a lot of objects in the project itself. What's the transition? What changed?
Yeah, you need to, of course, these kind of installation happens spontaneously, or it's always gathering around spontaneously. And to really create a fixed location where people can gather, we needed to create an object which connects and really feels like a part of the city, the identity of the city you want to go to, you want to meet, and you want to make an appointment to meet there or to go there. So therefore we created objects which people can interact with and in that sense stand around. But it's visible, all the objects are visible from all sides. Remco, you want to?
Please finish your.
He likes to answer that. He was part of the team, so sometimes he has maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's an interesting question actually, because during the research with all the designers together, we came very much to the point that because this is specifically for the city of Eindhoven, we had many discussions about how do you bring people together, especially if they're from other places and they need to kind of identify with a place, because that's a very important thing. So how do you create identity? And of course that's also that's what we do, and also that's I think part of the thing that we could add to the whole process. But it's interesting because Eindhoven is a very young city. It's a bit over 100 years old, officially over 100 years old. And it's very strong identity actually. There's a very, it's very, we had to design the identity 10 years ago. And Eindhoven is very interesting because it's a city of transformation. It constantly transforms. And that transforming energy is that what you try to recreate in the vibes. But also as a place, you need to be literally a place with icons that you can relate to. And also that kind of are symbolizing your future, what you're working towards. You know, if you can bring people together in that same cause, it's what actually the Evoluon, and that was one of the parts of the discussion was that with the designers that Eindhoven already created symbols to bring people together in a certain belief. For instance, the Evoluon was a symbol for the future, you know, like this UFO, and also there were more like the old Piazza Square. There was this work with the iron. What was it? It has been moved to a park, but that square was a kind of an amazing place. You know, if you came there, you literally you stepped into the future, and that was very strong. And we also thought okay, these objects also have to kind of bring people together in a certain kind of a certain how do you say direction, what the identity of Eindhoven.
What I find very interesting is that your name is Dutch Invertuals. For me, this is like inverted. First, you start with a place where you gather people around a circle. But before people are gathering around a circle, you need the identity that people know where to gather around and come together. And that's kind of, in design language, you call it inverted, kind of, maybe?
Yeah, maybe it's typical Invertuals.
Yeah.
I
Thank you, Remco, for your... Are there any other questions? Ernst? Okay, we are going for... we create our own social position.
So I love that you work with scale models. How did you choose the scale? So why 1 to 8? Yeah. Why not 1 to 50?
First we wanted to have. First we thought it should be a kind of wedding cake size, because we thought you need to have a kind of. To stand around and be what kind of object you really like to see or look into or be curious after. And so, but that then we had the scale models, and it was even larger than a Barbie. So then we thought maybe it becomes a bit too big for the goal. So then we tested. So first it was 1 to 5, then it became 1 to 6, and then we tested this will be, the glass house is also not that big, so we needed to scale down to 1 to 8. But that definitely worked perfect, because that's also the size you can make a prototype. That's the size you can play with the materiality, you can bring in the curiosity to show the little detailing and making, and you can imagine it to really realize. So, and it becomes also during the Dutch Design Week as a week of seeing all kind of different forms and objects. It's really nice to bring the objects, the scale of understandable object, so you can really walk through it and discover it. So not only because of the beauty, but also it's a maquette in that sense, or a model.
Nice. We have another question.
Hooking the two presentations together, did you ever think about putting this in a digital environment so that you have a holistic approach? I mean, these things are nice to see, but for the non-design viewer, they're just objects, and it's hard to imagine what they do with the environment. You want to see the process around the object, and I think a digital twin would be beautifully.
I see many opportunities. Maybe Ferdy.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, also looking into the way how we often do things with people and so on. We see when we bring the artifact or the object into the discussion, it's almost like 1 and 1 is 3. So, and I think we come from different approaches, but still talking about design, which is a very rich profession and has very different elements to it. And even within that subject, bringing things together would also accelerate some of that thinking. So I think it's a super fair point and a good idea. Yeah.
Wendy, how's that for you?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I definitely think we use, of course, also some. I think we also need to embrace our superhuman touch sentences. You need to touch it and feel it and smell the wood, because it's really hard working. And digital world is not that far yet, but definitely it could be interesting to show more people, and I think that is interesting as a digital tool, to show more people.
I agree. Obviously, you make it as a maquette so people can touch it, see it. But the thing is, your design is only the visualization of the object and not of the interaction. And the design, if I hear you talking, is all about the interaction. So you're missing a very important point, I think.
Well, I think there are two perspectives behind this, because your assignment was to create. Was it like creating social cohesion, or?
No, how can you create with a public object for a public space, which envision or create this kind of encounters. So for us, it's really important to create these objects to also test, because it was also for the visitors of Eindhoven or the Eindhoven inhabitants to really make a decision like, hey, I like this in my neighborhood. And people of the city of Eindhoven were also there to constantly hear the thoughts and explain the stories. And we even had an old-fashioned note to write down which one you liked. So we had a kind of voting. And we thought it was just something to add to the whole project. But we got a lot of votes, and a lot of people liked the whistling tree, of course. No, that's not true.
For sure,
that's not true. But they really like the instrument as well. So it's really, it's not the answer maybe, but.
No, that's okay. We have one question, and you were waiting already. Long time for your question.
No, it's fine, because the gentleman's question was. I was going, it was spot on. I was going to ask that as well, but I want to build on that, because in tech, usually you start with a digital twin for visualization, and then you collect, as you use it, as you collect data to simulate, use the data out of the actual real world to bring back into the digital twin and continue simulating. And so it becomes a spiral when you have that. And I was thinking that it might be interesting to fuse into these beautiful structures some sensing, and then bring back the data into the digital twin and do research and enhance and build upon it for the next generation of installations.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to that we indeed we had work sessions with the designers, but we created also 10 principles to really say like, hey, this is for the city of Eindhoven, interesting for policies and really work with that. But I was also very enthusiastic, but also about really making it happen, to really make it, to have it there, to really build it, to really, it's not one-to-one of course, but it's more like it's there, so we can talk about it. So because we talk a lot digital, we talk a lot about data, we talk a lot to go into the cities or into the different areas in the city to talk with a lot of people, and I think that is really important. You get very valuable information, but sometimes to really show it, to have it, to see it and to talk about it, I think that's also very valuable. So because I think we had the discussion before, so that we discuss a lot, or we meet a lot, or we do a lot of research, but sometimes I think these kind of pieces also are conversation pieces to work with.
I think it's interesting because you have both are like point where you begin. You start collecting data and you start designing from there, you know, or you start with the object and then collect the data. I think it's both very valuable. But I think it's very interesting to talk about that further during the drinks, because I see many opportunities. We have one last question in the back.
It's about actually the context, because now it's a standalone designs. And I'm curious how it is in the context, because for instance, I can imagine if that the sound installation, I do not want it next to my house, for instance. So how do you look at, and how did you do the research about the context of where should we place it? And that's also related to where do you want it and what does it want to achieve in that context with people around it?
What is your background? Are you tech or designer? Design. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We talked a lot about it, and of course, a lot of objects will not be directly in an area where people live together. And you hear constantly the whistlings of the tree. So definitely, that is not positioned for that kind of area. But we discussed a lot about the rural area or the area around the city, and we also discussed like, hey, maybe there are interesting locations in the city which are important connecting points for a lot of people to meet. Because in another research, another design group did parallel. They found out that some parts of the city are really important areas for the person who walks the dog, for the person who just have their running moments. There are certain areas which are interesting to have these encounters. So these objects could be there. Of course, something what makes sounds you don't place directly next to your front door, but definitely I think some objects could be a pavilion or nearby the woods, or so I see my partner, his finger.
Yeah, we're also a bit running out of time, so really short, Remco.
Very short. But the funny thing is that according, like using data and stuff like that, there was this voting thing, and 2 of the winning objects were sound installations. So it's data. So and next to your house, I get it, but the public vote, like a universal language is sound, universal. So it's not about circles, it's about the universal language, the language you all understand, and those are mostly fundamental things in life, like sound, play, water, stuff like that.
Thank you. Well, we are running out of time. This is the best part, always the conversation and the questions from the crowd. But before we end, I have a question for you two, because you saw each other's presentations. And Ferdy, what do you have a tip for Wendy, or something that you would like to work together with her, or?
Oh, absolutely. A tip, I would say, I think like this, I would like to bring more of that world into our world. I think so these are discussion points which interact like also from a visual point of view, and it sparks imagination, and that brings always new ideas forward. And I think that's super interesting to more incorporate in anything that we do, and in particular also in the process that we set up. So absolutely, yeah, great.
And for you, Wendy?
Yeah, I think these kind of questions from the city of Eindhoven is for us super interesting to work with, because then we really can show the design skills of the different designers within different disciplines and how we work. We can really translate that really well. We are known for a lot of interesting exhibitions we always do, and I think these social challenges we have, I think that is something we can really work on well. And maybe I'm not a social designer, but I'm super social.
For sure.
We'll have a drink.
Let's end with that. Thank you all. Afterwards, we will go to the bar for a drink and we will continue this conversation and asking questions. Afterwards, we also have a dinner, which you can attend. If you want to, please go to Zoe with her lovely sweater and tell her that you want to join for dinner. Next week we have a special edition for the city of Eindhoven. So please bring your friends and colleagues. And thank you so much and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.